All right, so thank you for joining us today, and I just want to welcome you again to the free online event, The Accidental Artist. And I just am so excited to have Scott here today. We have Scott Wade with us, and he is called the Dirty Car Artist. And I'm just so excited to kind of spread the word to as many people as possible that art can enrich your life, and I think he's a great, wonderful example of that. So, Scott, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Well, sure. I'm a 56-year-old guy who works at a high-tech company in San Antonio, and I design user interfaces for a living, and I do dirty car art also for a living, and I do that kind of part-time. The dirty car art is basically just drawing on dirty windows of cars. And it has afforded me the opportunity to travel around the world and all over the United States and get my work featured on television and in magazines and newspapers. And I've gotten to meet a lot of really great people, a lot of great artists, and just had a blast with it.
Wow, so designing user interfaces and dirty car art, that's totally different, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I love technology, and I love designing on a computer and using some of the tools that I use on a computer. But there's nothing like getting your hands dirty with art, And I love clay. I love paint. I sculpted stone and wood. Done murals, I've done all kinds of stuff in art, and the analog art is a very important thing for me. I have to do that as well. The digital would not be satisfying all by itself.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's really cool. So have you always done these kind of art things, or did you discover this later in life? How did you become an artist?
Well, by about third grade, I started to become fascinated with the illustrations in the books that I had. And one in particular was a Frosty the Snowman book. And the way the trees were drawn in these illustrations, I don't know, it just something clicked for me. And I said, well, I think I can draw this. And so I got some paper. And I started drawing and including the shading and some of the texture on them and the snow that was on the trees. And I showed it to my mom, who was playing bridge with some of her friends, and she showed it to her friends, and everybody said, "Oh, what a great artist you are!" And I thought, "Wow, I am. I had no idea." And so I started drawing, and then my father is a wonderful amateur cartoonist, or he was when he was alive, and he used to draw all these kind of coloring book drawings for the kids in our neighborhood every Christmas. And he would print them out at work on a Xerox machine and staple them together and pass them out as Christmas coloring books. And so I think I got a lot of my inspiration and possibly some talent from my father.
That is so sweet that he did that.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He did all kinds of stuff. And he also was a good sculptor. He could make things out of wood, would make really fancy race cars out of wood and all kinds of stuff. It was really cool. All the kids in the neighborhood loved him. And I also had in grade school, I had a grade school principal who was very encouraging, and she would hang my drawings on her wall in her office. So I think that also was another very important part of my development as an artist, having that early encouragement.
Wow, just kind of recognizing your talent. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Wow, so like your, the dirty car art that you do, for people who are not aware of it, can you explain a little bit about what you do with a dirty car?
Yeah, sure. I live in Central Texas, and a lot of the backcountry roads are covered in kind of a gravel and clay mixture that's either known as road base or sometimes it's known as caliche. And when it's dry and warm, and you drive down these roads, you get this large cloud of dust billowing up behind the car, and that settles on the rear window mostly, and sometimes on the side windows a bit. And after days of driving up and down a road like that, you will get almost opaque layers of this dust on the car. And I lived on a long dirt road in Central Texas for 20 years, so the cars were always dirty. And, there's no point in washing the car because it's going to just get dirty the next day. And plus, living on an aquifer in Central Texas, you want to be conservative of your water usage. So, I would go out and just doodle with my finger. And I don't know, probably most of the people listening to this will have the experience of not being able to resist that dirty car window. We have to go right, wash me, or draw a smiley face, or make a mark in it. It's like, it's right there. And of course, the shadow inside of the car is dark, and the dust that's on the surface of the window is light. So it creates this beautiful contrast. And it acts like a pencil drawing or a chalk drawing or a charcoal drawing on paper.
Right.
Instead of adding, the dark substance, you're removing the light substance to reveal the dark. And so I would go out and I would doodle around, mostly doing funny faces. Like I think I mentioned, my father was a amateur cartoonist, and so I would, that was just my fallback. Anytime I'm doodling around, I'm going to be drawing funny faces. And so I thought maybe, how can I get some shading? Maybe I can get a finer line if I use my fingernails. Sure enough, that worked. And I used the pads of my fingers brushing very lightly to just brush some of the dirt away to get some of the gray tones, instead of going just down to the window itself where it would be black. So one day I was chewing on a popsicle stick after I finished my popsicle, and I was out doodling around with my fingers, and I took that popsicle stick out of my mouth, realized I had chewed it at the end of it, and it looked like a brush. So what's going to happen if I use that? I tried it, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. Kind of a cross-hatching sort of effect, and very beautiful. So I ran into my studio, got a lot of art brushes, came out, started playing. Voila, dirty car is born, and the next day, or the next time the car was dirty, rather, I did a reproduction of Leonardo's Mona Lisa.
Wow.
And then I realized, I've got this horizontal space, and I've got this vertical image on it of the Mona Lisa inside her frame. And so what can I do in the background? So I put Vincent Van Gogh's Starry Night in the background. And so that was kind of the first serious piece of dirty art that I did. And it lasted for a long time because unless it rains, it's there for a long time. You can drive up and down the highway at 80 miles an hour, and it's not going to blow off of there. So I was able to show it to a lot of people and take pictures of it, send it out. And then I started doing this, and I did a lot of pieces, and I sent them to all my friends. And one of my friends sent an email with my images to a column writer at the Austin American-Statesman, John Kelso. And John called me up and said, "Hey, can I do a story on you?" And I said, "Sure." So he put this gallery of my stuff online and did an article in the paper, and the online portion went viral because all these bloggers started linking to it, and pretty soon it was all over the world.
Wow. How long ago was that? Like, how long has this been going on?
That was probably about 2003, 2004, something like that, maybe 2005. I'd have to go back and really look. The whole thing's been a blur, you know.
I bet. That's crazy. Like when I look at your art, I would think like the Mona Lisa and the Starry Night one would have been maybe a series later on, not like, okay, I'm just going to come out here my first try and do the Mona Lisa. It's just pretty amazing.
Well, I recognize that this art form could be as real and as serious an art form as any other. And so I wanted to do a highly recognizable and challenging piece of art so that people would recognize that. And so I've done several of the old masters. I've done Botticelli's Birth of Venus and Vermeer's Girl with Pearl Earring. So it's, I really love doing the old masters because it teaches me so much about art history and about the brilliance of these guys. They did all these paintings, just incredible stuff.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you spray something on them when they're done, or you just let them wash off naturally?
Yeah, they just go away naturally. I'm a firm believer in the impermanence of this art form. I don't really have any interest in preserving it. The fact that it's ephemeral is such a big part of what appeals to me about it. We humans tend to really, and myself included, tend to cling to things and want, we find things to be precious and we want to preserve them, and especially the things we create. But the truth is that everything is in the process of going away. There is nothing really permanent, except the things of the spirit. And so, just like a beautiful flower that blooms and then 5 days later it's withered and goes away, I think we can learn to appreciate art like that too. The Tibetan monks have the sand dolls that they spend 2 weeks on and then scrape it up and throw it in the river, And just for that very reason of helping us to understand maybe we don't need to cling on to things. We can allow them to pass from us and still to really have a lot of love and appreciation for what's been. You go down to the beaches nowadays and you see these great sand sculpture contests.
Yeah.
And master sculptors from around the world come in and create 16-foot tall sculptures. And then the beach takes them back. They're just part of the beach again in 2 days. So, and one more point on that. I'm a musician too, and there's nothing more impermanent than music. The minute you play a note, it's gone.
Yeah.
You'll never be back exactly that same way again. So.
Yeah, and I really like, what you're saying. It's almost like, you got to be in the moment and appreciate things when they happen. And that's how your artwork is. You can appreciate it for those 5 days or 6 days, and it really probably teaches you to appreciate it because it's going to be gone.
I think so. I think it does. And it also helps you to learn to let go and look forward to the next piece. Once a piece is rained off, that's not anything that I feel dismayed about. It's something that I feel excited about because that means I get to do another piece.
Yep, yeah, you can't let, sometimes you got to let other things go to allow room for other creativity,
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, that's great. I love that philosophy on that. So with, I know you do this art with the dust and stuff like that, but is this your favorite thing to do in the art world, or do you like clay better? If you could only pick one, which I know as artists, we don't have to, but if you could only pick one, which one would it be?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to answer that question, but I'm sorry I can't, because it's whatever I'm doing at the moment. That's my favorite. I might be doing an illustration on the computer, and that's absolutely my favorite thing. And then I might be doing a mural, or I might be doing some dirty car art, or I might be sculpting some clay, or I may be carving a tree trunk. They all have their own unique characteristics, and really, I wish I could tell you that yes, one of them is more. I will say the dirty card has been the most lucrative, but as far as no, it's really hard to say because I do really enjoy a lot of different mediums.
And that's the perfect answer because, we're trying to get across to as many people that hear this message, that art can enrich your life. So there's a perfect example of somebody who has several different ways that you go about making creativity stuff happen. And, it's not just, oh, I'm a painter. You have several different things you go to. So that's great. I love that.
Right. It's very, it's important to say too, I think that one thing informs the next thing. My art informs the music that I create. It informs the poetry that I write or the prose that I write. Creativity is a big wellspring. The world is a creative place. Just look around you. Look at nature. Look at what man does. Look at what the animals do. Everything is about creation. And, so just to immerse yourself in that is a wonderful thing. And it makes you feel like you're really a part of the universe. You're really part of this whole creation that we're in. And it's a beautiful thing.
Well said, Scott. Well said.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay, so Scott, who inspires you?
Gosh, everybody inspires me. I am amazed at just the ordinary people that I meet, and I'm also inspired by great artists and great musicians. Andy Goldsworthy, if I had to mention one artist that kind of rocked my world maybe more than anybody else, Andy Goldsworthy, who also is very much into impermanent art, Mm-hmm. I have a friend who's a wonderful Texas landscape painter named Greg Lota, and he inspires me a great deal. And, the number of artists and musicians and writers and dancers and business people and teachers that inspire me, it's just endless, I think once you start opening your eyes to how amazing people are, you can be inspired by almost anybody.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's.
I think even especially the people who are willing to go their own way and try to show something new, as opposed to just people who follow in the footsteps of others, which is a fine thing to do. Don't get me wrong, but the people who kind of march to their own, to be their own drummer, I think that those are the ones who really show us kind of the infinite possibilities in life.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's see. My next question, Scott, is what is one of the biggest benefits of creating art in front of a live audience?
Well, for me, I think it's really seeing the reactions that people have to the work. They're amazing because, you see a dirty car, you see dirty cars all the time. And they're part of our world, and they're considered to be an eyesore. And then you walk up and you see the dirty car, but somebody has turned it into a work of art. And most people just find that kind of hard to believe. At first their jaws drop and they just kind of look confused for a minute and say, "What is that?" And then they figure it out and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that is so neat." And then the chance to meet new people, to kind of share some of the ideas about impermanence. When people say, "Aren't you really upset when rain comes and washes it off?" And I'm able to tell them, well, no, because that means I get to do a new one, and because it teaches me to just appreciate things in the moment. And so I think they take that away with them. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of share that, and also to share the idea that art is where you find it. It's not necessary. It's not necessarily that you have to go into an art supply store and buy, $100, $200 worth of art materials to go create art. You can arrange pebbles in an interesting way down the sidewalk and create art. Art, it doesn't have to hang in a gallery. Art can be where you see something that you've never really noticed before, the way the dew drop glistens on a branch of a tree.
Right.
And that can be an artistic experience for you. So doing things live just gives me an opportunity to share that with folks.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Art, it's not just art hanging in a gallery. You're a perfect example of that with, being on the back of a car. You're right. Like, if I would walk up and see that in person, I would first off go, who did this? Oh my gosh, let me find my car so you can do it on my car too. But yeah, it's so true. Well, do you believe anyone can use art to enrich their life?
Absolutely. Art can be so many things too. It's not, different people do art for different reasons. For some people, it's a catharsis to get out their worries, their fears, their sadness, their pain. Other people use it because it increases their vibrance and their joy of life. Art is a language, but it's not like speech. We can talk about art, but we're to talk about art, I've heard it said, is like dancing with architecture. It doesn't really get it, because art is its own language, and it speaks in a way and to a different part of us than words can.
Right.
And so I think whether a person is just simply someone who appreciates art and looks at art, or whether they actually create art, I think that it's bound to be enriching to them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you would, what advice could you give somebody that has maybe never done art? Maybe they, drew that picture in 3rd grade and that's the last time they've ever tried it. What advice would you give them on how to start?
I would suggest start. I mean, do something. Take a class. Arrange, some leaves on a picnic table. Draw on a dirty window, or you start to notice things that you've never paid attention to before. Daydream. How different people approach art. It's hard to say that you should start this way. You should do this. The main thing is just to get into it. Start looking at art differently. Take more time. When you go to a gallery, don't worry about seeing everything in the gallery. If you want to spend a half an hour in front of one piece, spend a half an hour in front of one piece. Mm-hmm. Really explore it. See how it was created. Watch. Look at those brush strokes. Look at that line work. Look at those forms, those shapes. I think art classes are great, and I think if you can afford to take an art class, it's a wonderful thing. It won't hurt, but it's certainly not necessary. There are, especially with the internet now, you have access to all the great works of art that have ever been created, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Every town has a gallery. Every town has multiple galleries about. And there are artists working in their studios. Give one a call and say, hey, can I come into your studio and see how you work? And you can tell me, about your stuff. And most artists are really happy to do that.
Right. So, yeah, I'm sure artists are excited to have somebody interested in their work and, a lot of times in the studio, it's kind of lonely. You're working on your art, all day, every day, and sometimes it's nice to have that inspiration.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Scott, do you have any last thoughts for our listeners today?
Well, the only thing I might add is that art starts with looking, and that's a great thing to do, is to challenge yourself to see things that you've never noticed before, things that are in your everyday life, and I think you will find if you do that you'll just be amazed at how much you haven't been paying attention to, how much you haven't noticed, and how beautiful it all is. So I think that would pretty much sum it up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm going to start looking at things differently too after this conversation today. So, well, Scott, I appreciate you being here and sharing with us. And it's been so much fun having you on The Accidental Artist. And I hope everyone can learn from you and how art can enrich their life. So, thank you again for your time and all your inspiration. And please, please keep doing all of that artwork that you do on the dirty cars.
Well, thank you so much for your interest in my work, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you, Scott. And we will see you later. Bye, guys.